Hello everyone, it's Andy here again. We're back in the showroom at Kinder Kitchens in New Mills and High Peak. We're a small independent kitchen supplier. We supply kitchens and do installation design and supply and installation of kitchens. And it's another video today, and it's a part of a series of 3 about kitchen cost. So a pretty big one, this. Everything that we want to know about how much does a kitchen cost. That's what the video is going to be called. How much does one cost? I'm going to go through a few things. This is actually the second take of this video, so the last one was way too long. I just packed on for absolutely ages, and in this one I'm going to give you the answer that you want at the beginning as well, or close to the beginning, and then I'm going to go into a bit greater detail later on about how that information comes to be. So we're going to go through a few questions. The first ones we're going to cover is how this question's being answered currently. So if we're going to YouTube or the internet and just see how that question's being answered now. We're going to talk about how I'm going to answer this question, which is in a different way. We're going to have a close look at a couple of kitchen designs. We're also going to look at a design which is going to tell you how to measure your kitchen to get the solution that we're looking for, and then at the end we're going to touch on fitting costs as well, just briefly. I'm going to do a separate video on fitting costs anyway, and I'm going to do 2 more videos on kitchen costing, and one of them will be what you should expect for your money, and the other one will be how to reduce the quote, how to reduce a kitchen quote. In other words, you've been to your preferred supplier, he's given you a quote, and what steps you can take without compromising quality or longevity of your kitchen or the user experience, but just to bring that price down a bit. So let's get cracking on this one. So how much does a kitchen cost, and how is that question being answered currently? So I've done my research on the internet. I've looked at various videos on there, some of which have got thousands of views. And ultimately what they're all saying is, it depends. It depends on what sort of a kitchen you have, what size your room is, your house is, etc., etc., what your budget is anyway, what you want to spend on your kitchen. All of these things all play a factor in that, but they don't actually give an answer of how much your kitchen is going to cost. And that's what we're going to try to ask today. So other videos will say, well, there are cheap units with flat pack backs and whatever, there are mid-range units with solid backs, and then there are very expensive units with made out of oak face ply and stuff like that. But they don't really give us an answer of the question, how much will my kitchen cost? You guys need to know how much your kitchen's going to cost, and that's what this video is about. And the way that I'm going to answer that question is, if we look at those sorts of 3 tiers of kitchen, I'm just going to ignore that, and we're going to focus on the middle tier. So I'm not focused on the sort of supermarket kitchens. I don't like to name names because it's not about dissing other people's product. They've got the price point and they're appropriate for that price point. But ultimately, bottom end kitchens, builders supplied, we all know the sort of places that we're talking about, but those sort of flat pack kitchens typically come in around about 3,000, 4,000, maybe 5,000, depending on the size of your kitchen, about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pound cheaper than the mid-range kitchen. So if you were to go to an independent supplier, generally speaking, they produce kitchens in the mid-range section, and with that you will get all the things that I've previously talked about on my other videos, which is a solid, decent unit, a good door with a decent warranty, average appliances, high and laminate worktops or granite or a quartz worktop, something like that. And those are the kitchens that are going to go well over the 10-year mark, and 20 years it's going to be absolutely fine because they're really well built, solid construction. And then we've got the top tier, £100,000 plus kitchens. I'm just going to assume you don't want either end of those. You don't want the really cheap rubbishy one because you're only getting 5 years out of it, but it's only £3,000 or £4,000 cheaper. You don't want the top tier one because you haven't got £100,000 to spend on a kitchen, let's face it, who has? So we're just going to focus on that middle one. So I'm going to assume that you want that middle one, and that's the price that we're working it out on. So that's how we're going to answer the question today. And I'm just going to show you an image of let's put a cup of tea over there. I'm just going to show you an image of a kitchen. So I'm just looking at this. This will appear on your screen, hopefully, once I've edited that. And you can see by this image that we've got a design in here, just across the bottom there, we've got some tall housings, and I'll go into greater detail about how to read a design after I've given you the price. That way, if you're not interested in any of that, you can just stop watching at that point. But we can see at the bottom where I've written 4035, that's 4035 millimeters. So we've measured our wall where our kitchen's touching our wall. So across the bottom, we've got some tall housings there, and you can see the hob is in there and a set of drawers. So if I draw a line at the side of that tall housing on the right-hand side, and then draw a line at the left-hand side and measure that wall, it gives me 4035. And then if I do the same where the sink run is, where you can see the window on this design, it's 3544, 3540 millimeters. If you look at the top of the design where it says 1721, that's actually a peninsula that's coming into the room. But I'm assuming that peninsula was just on a wall. It's just another kitchen run. Although it's not touching a wall, we're just going to treat it as if it is. And then on the far top right hand side, we've got an 1854. That's a couple of tall housings. It doesn't matter if it's a tall housing or it's a base unit. All we're interested in is the amount of wall that the kitchen's going to be sat on. Now, if you're looking at your room now, you might go into your kitchen and say, well, we're having a new kitchen, and in essence, the kitchen is going to be on the same walls that it's on now. So you might have a C-shaped kitchen. There really isn't any other walls that you could put it on. So when you change your kitchen, you might change your design in subtle ways, but ultimately it's going to be on the same wall. So you can just measure out your wall to see where your kitchen is now, and then use that figure instead. If it's an extension, you might have some idea of where the kitchen would likely to be. If you're looking at your architectural plans for an extension and you've not even got to the stage of, of actually having the build done and there's no room as such, if you're knocking a wall through, again, you've got a rough idea of where that kitchen's going to be. So you're just going to use your imagination and measure the wall where the kitchen's going to be as accurately as you can. And once we've got those measurements, and you'll notice on the bottom left hand corner, I've measured the corner on both sides. So I haven't measured one in and then measured it, because I'm not measuring the worktop at the front, I'm measuring the walls where it's touching. That's absolutely fine. So we're going to add those figures up. So we've got a 4035, a 3544, a 1721, an 1845, and I'm going to add all them up, and what that gives me is 11,154 millimeters. So you can see in the middle it says total wall width with kitchen on is 11,154 millimeters. If you've got a kitchen that's a typical room, let's suppose, and a terrace house, we have a lot of an abundance of that just in the town where we are, and typically those rooms are about 3 meters by 4 meters. And if that's the sort of kitchen that you're having, and you're having a kitchen with a good unit and a good door, the mid-range, laminate, worktop, average appliances, Hotpoint, Samsung, something like that, then you're going to multiply that figure by about £1,400. So the calculation will be 11154 times 1,500, and that's going to give you a figure, and that is the figure of your kitchen. So that includes the units, the doors, which is all the pelmets and plinths and all that kind of stuff, your worktops, your appliances, it's all included in that. I've worked this out over lots and lots of designs, costing lots of different designs up, and working out an average of that. And it is an average, it's not spot on, but for a 3x4 room, you're going to multiply that by about £1,400. I'm going to show you a spreadsheet in a bit which goes into more detail, but if you're here for the quick news, that's it. If you've got the same size room but you're going to put a quartz worktop in there, you're going to take that same figure, the 11,000 figure, and you're going to multiply it by £1,500, £1,600, somewhere around there, 1,550 call it, and that's going to give you a different figure, and that will be representative of the cost of that kitchen with a quartz worktop on. If you've got a bigger room, let's suppose you live in a house that's 3-4 bedroom semi-detached house, or a detached house or something like that, the chances are that you'll have a bigger room. So you might have a room that's more like that figure may have swelled up to God knows what. If that's the case, typically when you find a bigger house, usually means a bigger room, it usually means a bigger budget. That's just the way it is. People who live in big houses have more luxurious kitchens. They tend to choose more expensive granites. They have more wire work and oak, handmade oak features in their rooms, and they just end up more expensive. They tend to be more than one sink, or it's a wider hob, it's a wider extractor, it's a more expensive appliance. And generally speaking, because the budget's greater, the kitchen ends up more luxurious and consequently more expensive. So if that's you, if that's your house, if you're living in a house that's, 4 or 5 bedroom semi-detached house, I want you to use a slightly different figure. I want you to add your room up where your room's going to be, and I want you to multiply it by £1,900. If you're having laminate, and if you're having quartz, I want you to multiply it by about £2,200, and that's going to give you a slightly more accurate figure. So that's what you've got. I am going to show you a spreadsheet in a little while, and at that point then you can take a photograph or take a screenshot of it, and that's going to and you can take that information away. But so let's have a look at our couple of designs first of all, our actual kitchens designs. And if you only want the short version, then stop watching now, and I hope that's been of use for you. But I'm just going to go through some other stuff, and I'll just find my plan 1. So my first plan is, I'm just going to put up that screen for you now, so you can see our room that we've got here. It's about 3,960, so about 4 meters by about 3,000 meters. And I'll just quickly go through the room with you. So at the top left hand side there's a 400 larder. That little cross on top of the unit tells me it's either a wall unit or it's tall. The base units are in the black, and the red units that you can see around there, they're wall units. And then we've got a tall housing which has got an integrated fridge freezer in it, another tall housing which has got an integrated double oven in it, a 450 base unit, then there's a drawer pack which has got the hob on and the extractor above that, then there's a corner unit, 2 ways of getting around the corner in the kitchen. There's an L-shaped type unit where you open one door and then you open the other door and you kind of got access inside. Then there's a 400 base unit, likely to have a bin in it because it's right next to the sink. You can see the sink's a Belfast actually on there. So you've got a 600 sink base, which you would have in most kitchens with a bowl and half sink. Then there's a smaller drawer pack, another one, which will have 4 175 drawers in it properly. Excellent for mashers and stuff, bigger items that won't necessarily fit under your hob. Because once you've got your cutlery tray under your hob, especially if it's an induction hob and it's quite deep, then things like that can get caught. And so it's nice to have that little extra drawer pack. Another corner unit, that type of corner unit is called a blind corner. So that's typically the one where you have to reach around the corner or put some kind of wire work or pull out. 610, that little green thing that's on the front of the plan there, that tells me that it's an appliance. So that's a washing machine. Another blind corner next to that, and then there's a 150 little unit on the end of that peninsula. It's probably got a bottle rack or something like that in there. And then you can see that the back of that worktop, the back of that peninsula's got an overhang, and those 2 round objects are stools there. So we're just looking at that plan. And then our wall units, just going to the left of our hob, was a 300 wall unit there. Then there was a blind corner wall unit there, and then a 600. That's a boiler housing. It's quite an unusual type of unit to have in a wall. That I just looked at the picture before, and I can tell that that's actually a boiler housing. The 600 unit, where my cursor is, it's actually a boiler housing. That's why that type of unit's been employed there, which isn't a typical solution to a corner, but with the boiler housing there, it has to be. And then on the other side there are 2 1000 units, 2 1000 wall units, and that's our plan. We can have a quick look at the image of that, which is there. We can see our tall housings on the left hand side, and then our hob going round, and you can see the boiler housing, how it sinks down a little bit to hide the pipe work, because that particular boiler in that design must have been had pipe work going through into the wall. You can see the Belfast sink there and the stools. Looks fantastic. So that was design number 1, and it had 16 units in that kitchen. And so plan 1, our average room, if we look at the spreadsheet that I'm just showing you now, you can see that a laminate cost, the cost for that kitchen was 14,459. The wall length for that kitchen is 10,500 millimeters. So multiply those things together. The cost per meter, which is what I gave you before, was 1,380. So when we multiply those 2 cells, we'll get that figure there, which is our 14,459. 14,400 figure. And again, if we did it on quartz, we'd be multiplying those two figures there, and it will give us that figure. And that would be the cost of that kitchen. And I've worked this out about 10 or 15 designs, and it is pretty accurate. Let's talk about plan 2 then. So I'm just going to show you plan on the screen now, and this is more typical of what you might expect in a kind of a 3-4 bedroom sort of property. And like I said before, generally speaking, the cost of kitchens doesn't necessarily just go up just on size. It does go up on size, obviously. The more units you've got, the more expensive it is. But more expensive or greater budgets tend to lend themselves to more expensive, colour match paint doors, more expensive granite, sinks, taps, and so on and so on. So there is an inflation of price that's not just relative to the size of the kitchen. So I'll quickly talk you through this one. Just at the bottom left here, there's an integrated fridge again, and there's another larder, a couple of base units, and then where that red cross is, that's actually a dresser unit with some drawers in. The other side of the room there's another larder, and then there's another larder which is surrounding a nib. Now this kitchen, that nib won't have ended up that size. They always kind of when starting an architectural plan, and you don't know how big the nib's going to be to support steel. It's best to start off with it bigger than what you need to. You can always make it smaller later on. So there may well have been some storage that ended up in that. But when you're looking at that room, you won't be able to see the nib at all. It's effectively buried into the back of the unit. There's an oven there, oven microwave combination, and then a tall panel, and we're on to base units again. So 300 base unit, 800 draw pack, 450 base unit, corner unit, which is the blind corner type, sink base, 600, 400 unit, probably a bin, another 150 unit, which will be a spice rack of some kind, L-shaped corner on the end. It's nice if you've got 2 corners in your kitchen. It's nice to use one of each type of corner unit, I think, and you get the best of both worlds. Another drawer pack on the end there, so another wide drawer pack, and then there's a small unit on the back of this peninsula which has left a small amount of space for you to sit underneath. Wall units are just across the top of the hob there. There's an open unit to the right hand side and then 2 wall units, and we'll just have a quick look at the pictures of that, which are there. I'll just get that. And we can see from the picture, the first one, the seating there, breakfast bar stools overhang. That's your peninsula. You can see the sink over there. And the open unit at the top side, and then looking from the other direction, you've got your oven. You've got some extra drawers underneath the oven there as well. And yeah, drawer pack there. So you can see the 2 drawers actually on the right hand side are 2 very big pan drawers. So a lot of pan storage there, and then from this side you can see that we've got some dresser units there with a 3-door dresser, so bed drawers at the bottom, then some storage, and then some glass doors at the top. Looks fantastic. And then if we go back to our spreadsheet, we can see that so for plan number 2, we can see where we get these slightly bigger figures. So again, if you're working out your meterage on laminate, then you're going to take and this is the design that we used for our illustration earlier on about how to measure your room. So you've got 11,154, and we're going to do that by 1900, multiply that by 1900 this time, and if you do that, it will give you that figure there. And the same if you were doing to a quartz, again you'd have a slightly different figure. Use that and it will give you that figure there. So that's how we work this out. And there's just a few other things that I wanted to talk about, which was installation. So I'm just gonna show you this section here. It's in purple. So if we look at that, installation cost. So this is based on plan number 1. So a room ready installation, and when I say room ready, I mean the kitchen's been taken out, it's plastered, all the electrics in the right place. You've had an electrician in already. You're not going to be, your kitchen fitter isn't going to be doing any electrics. He's just fitting the kitchen. He's going to plumb the sink up, but in essence, he's just doing all the sort of joinery work. And if you were to get a good kitchen fitter in to do that, I'm not talking about some bloke who bought a worktop jig last week and he's got it in the back of his car. I'm talking about a mature, proper kitchen fitter. Then you will be looking at about £100 per item. And that is an average figure. So it doesn't matter if it's a fridge freezer, which obviously takes half a day, or whether it's a 300 base unit, which takes 10-15 minutes. So each one of those things, if we allow for each item, whether it be a washing machine, oven, base unit, wall unit, appliance, freestanding appliance, whatever it is, we're just going to call it one thing per item. I mean, if you look back to plan number 1, you'll see that there are 18 items in that room. £100 per item gives us a figure of 1,800. So to have your kitchen installed by a decent fitter and your sink plumbed up from a room ready perspective, and then your electrician's going to separate, he's going to do all that, then you're looking at about £1,800. If you're paying much more than that, you're probably paying over the odds. 1,800's about there, somewhere up to £2,000. Let's call it that. It does make a bit of difference if it's granite or whether it's laminate, because if it's granite, the granite company will be installing the granite. The fitter probably won't have to do that, and if he is doing, you're probably buying a piece of you're probably buying a piece of granite that isn't necessarily, to get your fitter to install your granite basically is not an ideal way of going out. You want your granite to come from your granite company so that they can template it and do it. So if it's not room ready, your room, and you're doing it from scratch, in other words, you've basically got a kitchen in your room now, you've got to take it out and do everything, then we're going to look at a room, an installation with room preparation package. And for that, you're looking at about £400. Again, this would be for plan 1, about £400 to get rid of the kitchen. So fitter's got to come in there, strip the whole kitchen out. He's probably going to redo the plumbing because it's probably a bit of a mess around there, and he's just going to cut it off at source and run new pipes in so it's all nice and new at the back. And he's got to get rid of it as well, so he's going to need a skip, and that's 150 quid at least these days. So you're looking at about £400 just to do that part of this process. To renew all the electrics in the room, including, for all your new appliances, and make sure everything's as it should be and certified, £600. Allow £600 for that. Just to be clear, if you're putting 30 downlights in the ceiling, it's going to be more than £600. But for doing, if you're going to you want to change your light fitting, and you're doing all the rest of your electrics and your above worktop sockets with it'll be new sockets and everything. £600 is what you'll be paying. To skim that room out fully, so an overboarding of the ceiling and to plaster all the walls, £800 is what you're looking at for about that. Installation will be the same again, £100 per unit, whether that be appliance or whatever. And if we add all those figures up together, we can see that there we come up with £3,600. So if it's a full installation, again, using proper tradesmen, a proper job done, then you're looking at about £3,600 for your installation. So you can add that on top of now whatever you worked out for your kitchen meterage. And I have done a quick fitting cost per metre there, and that's basically if you kind of work on the pound about £190 per metre, it worked out similar. I would personally use the unit method. I think it's more accurate. But if you want to do it like that and work it out, it'll work out somewhere around. I've just put asbestos removal there. So if you've got anything that's even remotely looks like asbestos, get it tested. Dead easy to do. Just send off for a kit. You can get them off Amazon. You basically get a couple of bags. There's loads of instructions on there. You register the thing. You get a few samples out your ceiling, a few small pieces. You put them in the bag. You send them off, and you'll get an asbestos result. And you might as well do that before you start anything else, because if that's going to be a problem, asbestos removal is another added cost that we're running into more and more these days. And that's it. You've got a pretty good idea there of what your kitchen's going to fit, what your kitchen replacement is going to cost. So hopefully that's been of some use to you, and I've tried to keep it as short as I possibly can. As I said before, the next video, what you should be getting for your money, super important, that one. And because don't go spending your money on, if it's cheap, there's a compromise, and in the kitchen world it's a big compromise as well. So we'll make sure we watch that one, and also how to get the cost of the kitchen down. There's a few tips there. I'm not saying you're going to half your quote, but there's a few tips there on realistic methods of trying to, if you go to your preferred kitchen retailer, whoever that might be, they've got a good reputation, you like the stuff in the showroom, you know that they're good, you know the guy, whatever, but his quote's too expensive. Some active methods there that you might be able to actually reduce that cost down a bit and get it into budget or a bit closer to budget. Okay, I hope that's been loads of use to you, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, bye-bye.